Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, for spending some time in the evening and listening to us. I will divide this into two parts. One is need to know and good to know. I think he gave a long list of need to know, the essential things that one should know, and have a solution-based approach. We as journalists, we will put many things in perspective. We ask number of questions. We always ask questions and try to get answers. Sometimes we get them, sometimes we don't get them. But let me put things in perspective on the good to know part of it. On a day-to-day basis, to take the example of monitoring your portfolio or wealth or the balance sheet, it can be done on a daily basis. Why should it not be done on a daily basis? Why only on a weekly or a monthly or a 6 monthly basis? We monitor so many things every day. We watch movies, we go to office, we see if the gas burner is switched off, we see if the geyser is switched off. We also see movies, we watch news, we monitor our blood pressure. Why not monitor the markets and the wealth? Important, good observation, so that you understand what's going on. That's very important because it's a large sum of money that we have put in. Having said that, the last 6 months and the next 6 months are going to be very, very important. So I will look at it from three very important trends that have changed during the last 6 months and the coming 6 months. The first and most important trend that has changed is in the global markets. The second one is the macroeconomic factors in India, and the third is the political developments. Three key things matter a lot to the markets. Of the three, two of them are partly playing out, and the third one is just started playing out. We don't understand where we are headed as far as politics is concerned. First, let me focus on the global factors. The global factors 4 months back, sometime in September, August, September, was completely against India. It did not help us at all. Dollar was strengthening, US equities were running up, it was going through the longest bull run in the US market, and crude prices, we were all talking about $100 to crude. By October end and beginning of November, everything changed. Everything changed in our favor. So to a great extent, that's playing out on the Indian economy now. What has changed? The US markets, equity markets, bull run has stopped. The dollar strengthening has kind of peaked, and the crude prices have fallen sharply. We went to as low as 50, now we are looking at somewhere around $60. Nobody is talking about $100 now. All these things have suddenly turned the tide in favor of India. Today we are looking much better in terms of macroeconomics, coming mainly from the global markets. Now why is it important to India? It's important because whenever developed markets peak out, the fund flow movement, today we are living in a very, very complex world. The complexities are so much that every day things are changing at a very rapid pace. 10 years back I said that things are changing. Now I find that things continue to change, and tomorrow it will change even further. Sometimes even fund managers don't know what to do. They leave it to the computer, they leave it to algos to take care of investments. Anyway, that's a separate subject. So the global changes have helped us control our inflation, control our macroeconomic balances, and of course the impact on profit and loss of many companies. That's one major change. So therefore the fund flow is moving from developed markets to emerging markets. One of the beneficiaries is supposed to be India. It's still supposed to be India, that's what analysts have been saying. But we have still not seen any major funds coming into India. Theoretically, if emerging markets are going to attract India, you talk to any fund manager, we talk to many fund managers every day, they'll say we are bullish on India, India is positive, India is the greatest story, but still money is not coming. So theoretically, when developed markets have gone up, they've peaked out, and there is a bearish outlook, money should move to emerging markets. Now where is that money moving into emerging markets? It's supposed to come to India, Brazil, China, etc. Money is not coming to India as yet. It might come. We don't know when. So that's something we have to wait and watch. It's an uncertainty. That's point number one. On the domestic macroeconomic front, taking off from where you left, the inflation part. Now this inflation change that we are seeing is something which we have not seen many years. Today we are looking at 2.2% retail inflation. Now this 2.2% retail inflation is relevant to the government, it's relevant to policy making, relevant to interest rates. So to that extent it affects all of us directly or indirectly. So interest rates will go down. Now that has changed the way investments are going to change at a macro level. So money which was shifting to fixed income and debt is now stalling. It's moving back to equities. But equities, there is still some kind of hesitancy, some kind of uncertainty. Now that is where my third factor comes, that's the political uncertainty that we are looking at. So is it going to be BJP, is it going to be Modi, or is it going to be an opposition combine? We don't know how it's going to happen. So we need to wait and watch for that. Now the third element of uncertainty is why people are not putting their money with conviction in equities, which is why we are seeing large volatility and swings in the markets. Whether you take Nifty or you take any index for that matter, you will see there is a movement within a 5% range, for specific stocks, even for large caps. So it is this volatility and it is this uncertainty which has made investors to stand aside, wait and watch, let me not park my money. So where do you park your money in the meanwhile? That is the third point. And there has been a structural change. This is the fourth factor which we need to take into account, is that large number of average fixed deposit holders are moving and have moved in large numbers to mutual funds. They say fund managers are giving me much better return than a fixed deposit, whether it's 5%, 6% or 7%. So that shift has happened every month for the last 18 months or so roughly. It started with 4,000 crores coming into the hands of the fund managers of India, the top 10 mutual funds, to manage their funds. Today we are talking about 7,500 crore to 8,000 crore. Now that's roughly equal to $1 billion on an average coming into FIIs. So the FII money that used to come and support our markets has been replaced by our own money, and that money comes from an average income, low income people also, people who are earning 25,000, 30,000, who are just started their work. They are investing 500,000 rupees. That's the structural shift that we are seeing in the economy. Now all these 4 or 5 trends that I am bringing out are very important. There is a lot of volatility. Investment becomes far more complex now. Okay, it's good, you give it to a fund manager, you can give it to a fund manager, expert fund managers are there, they'll give you 15% returns, but then these are important and good to know things so that your decision making and your ability to, not only a journalist who should ask the question, you can also ask the question to Feroze. So let me start. In this kind of a situation, how will you manage?
Very good. I think Murli Sahab, you've actually put a context very well. One thing I would derive from this conversation is that things are changing, right? 2 महीने पहले लग रहा था कि तबाही है, 2 महीने के बाद लगता है कि सब ठीक हो गया. So what should one do? So that's why I'm saying, if you go with views and products, then you will be pulled from different sides, because 2 महीने पहले कुछ कह रहे थे हम सब, 2 महीने बाद कुछ और कह रहे हैं. So peg yourself to an objective, because whenever when you leave today from home, you switch on Google Map, right? Where you say, this is where I want to go, and then take that path. If you don't know where you want to go, then everybody will try and take you where they think today is relevant for you to go. And tomorrow things change, then he comes up with debt. After 3 months, something else changes, and then you go back into equity with new money. So unless you put an objective, you will be sailing without a compass. So that's my humble submission. So that's very important. That's why attaching yourself to opinions becomes a very fluid process. Because in 10 years, opinions would have changed 20 times favorable and unfavorable.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So what we say is, if this is my objective, whatever helps me get there in the simplest fashion, I will get there. Point 2 is that if it is complex, it can also be made simple. See, why is, by just one, categorize yourself as trader or investor. पहला सवाल ये उठता है कि आप ट्रेडर हो, रोज खरीदते बेचते हो या इन्वेस्टर हो. If you are investor, I would say your life is 10 times simpler than a trader. Why? Because you don't need to know कल क्या होगा. You want to know 10 साल में इंडिया कहां जाएगी, 15 साल में क्या ट्रेंड है. So traders need direction. Investors like you and me need trends. Okay, we need trends. We don't need direction. That's the simpler part of it. There's so much information which might not be relevant to you and me in the day-to-day basis.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's why he said it's good to know. It's not necessary for me to know. Now, third, how do I manage in riskier situations like this? Election can come. Most people say I will stay out. So that's when finance comes to my rescue. Finance has instruments which help you moderate your blood pressure. Okay, fortunately. Like finance has an instrument which, it's been my favorite. It's called a LEAP, L-E-A-P-S. LEAPs are nothing but portfolio insurances. LEAPs are portfolio insurances available from 2008 in India, which you and me can use. These portfolio insurance, जैसे you buy a life insurance, like you buy a car insurance, you can also insure your portfolio at a specific price. Should we use it or not use it is a matter of strategy, but you should know of it. So how would I approach an election if my client is a new investor to equity? कल तक वो real estate में 80% थे. If he was 80% in real estate 2 years back, then of course he is not used to this utar chadao, right? And it will create anxiety in him or her. So I would hedge their portfolio very efficiently. LEAPs do it very efficiently. It costs about 2% a year. अगर मैंने 2% साल के दे दिए LEAP के, तो फिर if the market becomes zero, Nifty becomes zero, the entire compensation comes back to you. From whom? Through NSE, it comes back from a counterparty. So then if I pay 2%, then I can have 365 nights of sleep peacefully. Right? Why is it important for you to know? Because at different points in time, if let's assume 2017, 2017 equity did very well, 30% return. Then I said 30% एक साल में आ गया, क्या उसमें से 2% खर्च करके 28 को प्रोटेक्ट कर लूं? Should that be a matter of debate? क्या वो डिबेट हुई थी? अगर नहीं हुई थी तो मतलब फिनेंस अभी तक पहुंचा नहीं है, क्योंकि फिनेंस में ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट इंस्ट्रूमेंट है. ट्रेजरी में वी कांट इवन स्टार्ट वर्किंग विदाउट अ लीप, बट वेल्थ मैनेजमेंट में इंडिविजुअल में शायद नहीं पहुंचता. सो दैट्स हाउ वी आर ट्रैवर्सिंग दिस. द सेकेंड पीस ऑफ डेटा, वी एनालाइज 20 years of elections. 20 years we have had 4 elections, general elections. Then we said election के टाइम पे रिटर्न बनी थी या नुकसान हुआ था, ये देखते हैं. 20 सालों का डेटा है, उसको देखना चाहिए. So we looked at 4 of these elections. 6 months before you invest and 6 months later you remove. So 12 महीने, if you stayed invested for 12 months during encompassing the election period, what would have happened in the last 4 general elections? It has never lost money. This 12-month period, having an election in the middle, has never lost money, point 1. The minimum return has been 16.3 for that year, and the maximum return has been 55%. But perception and impression is that election is a very big threat, but data says election has been an opportunity. Data says, at least the last 4. The next 5th one could be different, but at least when I speak to people, they're more afraid of election than they see it as an opportunity, right? So that's the actual truth of data. So I would not be as worried, because we are the fastest growing दिस साइज इकोनॉमी, मतलब इतनी अच्छी बढ़त हो रही है इंडिया की इकोनॉमी में कि 4-5 साल पहले हम 10वीं नंबर पे थे, आज हम 6ठी नंबर पे हैं। मतलब वी आर फ्रॉम 10th economy to we have to come to 6th, and we are just beating Britain this year hopefully with 2.6 trillion. So we will now be the 5th largest economy in the country. So all this with such high interest rate, ब्याज जब ज्यादा होता है तो ग्रोथ कम होती है। इतना बड़ा ब्याज रख के भी हम इतने मात्रा में ग्रो हो रहे हैं, जब ब्याज कम हो जाएगा तो उस ग्रोथ का अंदाजा करना कठिन है। So I would
I will take off from where you left. Generally, debt is perceived to be risk free.
Correct.
But then we see a lot of volatility. Debt as a fixed investment, if you keep it for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, it's fine. But when you hand it over to a debt fund manager, there are so many products today. Some will give you 6%, some will give you 7%, some can give you 12%. But there is a lot of volatility in the interest rate scenario also, which is reflected in the yields. How does one perceive debt? You talked about insurance against capital loss, but we are also talking about some kind of risk-averse investments where we can protect capital as well as earn a slightly higher rate. How do you approach debt in this market?
See, of course, debt in India is very, very important. अगर ब्याज 2% होता तो मैं केयर भी नहीं करता, डेट को क्यों समझूं यार, 2% का ब्याज साल दर में मिलता है। टुडे इंडिया इज 8-9% काइंड ऑफ इंटरेस्ट रेट, सो डेट इज अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट पार्ट ऑफ योर्स एंड माई लाइफ, सो अंडरस्टैंडिंग डेट इज इंपॉर्टेंट। पॉइंट 2, डेट की सबसे नेगेटिव बात क्या है? डेट होता क्या है फॉर पीपल? डेट इज समटाइम्स इट कैन बी अ कॉम्प्लेक्स वर्ड टू पीपल हु आर स्टार्टर्स। कंपनी को उधार दो तो उसको कहते हैं डेट। टुडे इफ यू वेंट टू आईटीसी एंड लेंट आवर मनी, हमने उधार दिया तो उसको कहते हैं डेट। उनके पार्टनर बन गए, उनको जाके पैसे देके उनके पार्टनर बन गए तो उसको कहते हैं इक्विटी। एज सिंपल एज दिस, इफ आई बिकम अ पार्टनर आई एम इक्विटी, इफ आई एम अ लेंडर टू द कंपनी इट इज डेट। डेट का प्रॉब्लम यह है कि मैंने उनको, आई गेव देम मनी बट दे वेंट बैंकरप्ट और वो डूब गए तो पूरे पैसे चले जाते हैं। ऐसे नहीं कि 20% पैसा चले जाएगा, पूरा पैसा। सो डेट हैज अ बिग रिस्क ऑफ डिफॉल्ट। इफ द कंपनी डिफॉल्ट्स देन ऑल योर मनी गोस, नॉट अ लिटिल, मोस्ट ऑफ द मनी इज लॉस्ट। सो हाउ डू यू मिटिगेट दिस? पॉइंट 3 इज डिवर्सिफिकेशन। मतलब अपने 100 रुपए इतने लोगों में बांट दो कि एक दो डूब भी जाए तो फर्क नहीं पड़े। सो हाउ डू यू मिटिगेट रिस्क ऑफ डेट? इज बाय spreading your money so thin that even if I gave it to 100 corporates, if 3 people also defaulted, if I have equally given my money, then I will lose 3%. कमर नहीं टूटती, ब्याज थोड़ा कम मिलेगा उस साल, चलेगा। So it's important to mitigate debt by diversification. So diversification is unfortunately not possible by you and me. That's when we recommend only one category of debt funds. There are 16 category of debt funds. इतना कॉम्प्लेक्स करने की जरूरत ही नहीं है, but 16 kinds of mutual funds are there in the debt category. We say only one is relevant, and for the last 7 years we have been giving our clients only one category, which is called accrual category. उसमें अगर आप 4 फंड खरीदते हैं तो automatically you have lent your money to 120 people, 120 corporates. So debt का unfortunate, the way to mitigate risk in debt is by spreading your money so thin that even if a few corporates went bankrupt, it should not impact you significantly. How to do that? So that any piece of advice which is given has an action to be derived out of. You should buy something called accrual funds only. The other 15 might not be relevant to you at all. So you have to cut the clutter and focus on things which are relevant to you. So that is an accrual fund. And even if you buy debt, buy accrual funds and then check, ask your advisor to check कि मैंने 5 फंड खरीदे हैं, वो तो दिख रहे हैं मुझे 5 फंड, इसके अंदर क्या है मिर्च मसाला? You have to ask कितने लोगों को मैंने पैसे लेंड किए हैं, 120 हैं या 85 हैं। So जितना आपने स्प्रेड किया, so most investors who have invested in debt, they say I have invested in 5 funds. Then I ask them a question. You have to open the box of 5 funds and check how many corporates have you lent the money to. And then when you see there could be 5 funds lending it to only 30 corporates, or there could be other 5 funds lending it to 120 corporates. Both optically are only 5 funds. So is it not your duty and your advisor's duty, largely your advisor's duty, to tell you how many corporates have you in effect lent to, which is not optically visible? Fourth point, how do you check the risk before you invest? Very important point. You can then subsequently do the secondary Google पे आप देख सकते हैं. ये बहुत important है आपको check करना. अगर आप lend कर रहे हैं पैसा तो सिर्फ रेटिंग नहीं देखनी चाहिए. लोग कहते हैं AAA कंपनी है, मैं अपने पैसे लगा देता हूं. AAA कंपनियां भी डूबती हैं, राइट? 20 डिफॉल्ट्स इन इंडिया, 20 कंपनियां जो डूबी हैं उसमें से 14 AAA थी 1.5 साल पहले. दिस इज अ वेरी स्टार्क डेटा. AAA देख के मैं खरीद लूं और 2 साल में वो बैंकरप्ट हो जाए तो मेरी उम्मीद थी कि ये बहुत स्ट्रॉन्ग कॉर्पोरेट है, बट उस डूब गया. तो दूसरी एक चीज आपको चेक करनी चाहिए, जो रेटिंग के अलावा आप इसको चेक करना ही चाहिए, आपके एडवाइजर को पूछना चाहिए. उसको कहते हैं Z स्कोर, Z स्कोर, Z स्कोर. If your advisor has not checked the Z score, you should compel him to check the Z score. That will tell you a better picture than rating. So I'm just leaving you with this word so that you can do some, because for the lack of time, I'm just leading you with the questions. If you ask the right questions, then the advisor knows that this man or this lady is asking me questions which is making me do the homework. Sometimes your advisor will say, मैंने नहीं सुना Z score, which is okay, but जा सीख ले और मुझे बता कि मेरा Z score कितना है. So it's very important. Z score tells you far better than rating in my experience.
It's a very important question when it comes to debt. When you're investing in equity, you can see the price every minute while the trading is on. You can watch it every day. And if you know that there is a cut, your investment has gone down by 10%, you still have chance that 90% of your money will come back. In debt, you won't even know. You may not even get anything. It might be just zero. So we all know how the liabilities. It's therefore important to ask these questions and give it to a safe fund which lends to a company which has the ability to repay, basically. Okay, my next question is asset allocation. We generally talk about, 10 years back we would have talked about real estate as part of the assets. At that time, real estate was running high. In the current context, real estate is not yielding any returns. But still, as a contrarian, would you advise your investors to go in for a little bit of real estate?
Unfortunately, we as Indians have loved anything to do with tangibility. जो मैं देख सकूं, जिसका दरवाजा खोल के अंदर जा सकूं, उसमें हमारा प्रेम उसके प्रति ज्यादा है, right? So we have Indians, HNIs have almost 60% of the money in real estate. If we draw up a balance sheet for all of us, it is likely that 60% of your money and my money could have been in real estate. I changed it 5 years back when I told everybody. So I have only 7% of my money in real estate. I'm still struggling to remove that 7 as well. My firm belief is that you should not have real estate for the next 4 years as well. For the last 5 years, today we don't debate too much. Like we concluded that real estate has not made money. When 5 years back on ET I had written an article, people said you've gone crazy. Real estate is what made money for Indians. It has made money. But will it continue to make money is the question, which is more progressive and prospective than retrospective. So point one, in an asset allocation, if my balance sheet, which I draw up, and that's very important, I'm highlighting that you should make your balance sheet exhaustive. If that comes as 30% real estate, 40% real estate, my personal, as a company's suggestion would be that real estate should be zero for the next 4 years, 5 years, unless you're consuming it. If you're consuming it, if you have your offices, if your child wants to come back to India, if he's studying abroad, want to occupy that house, all that is perfect, right? Otherwise, you should not have real estate because it will not make money for you. In our opinion, data says so. Not a Feroze, not an Anand, Rathi, data says so. 9 लाख अपार्टमेंट बन के तैयार पड़े हैं, 9 लाख अपार्टमेंट तैयार पड़े हैं, खरीदार का वेट कर रहे हैं, राइट? 27 लिस्टेड कॉर्पोरेट्स जिनकी जो स्टॉक मार्केट में लिस्टेड हैं, बिल्डर्स, उनके पास ही 1.25 लाख अपार्टमेंट पड़े हैं जो बेचना है. That is an audited report. So that's a very credible number. 27 listed builders have 1.25 lakh crore, 1.25 lakh apartments ready, inventory to sell. Basic economics says, अगर supply ज़्यादा हो, demand कम हो, तो दाम बढ़ नहीं सकते. So that's the situation which real estate unfortunately can go through. Price घटेगा नहीं तो भी 3-4 साल wash out हो जाएंगे. 3 years, 4 years, losing 4 years is losing 50% of the value.
Right.
Right. So I would say 0 to real estate, 60 to 65% in equity, 30 to 40% in debt is a good combination. Gold, ideally, I have a very contrarian view on gold for the last few years and forever. Gold is not an asset. Okay, I'm making this statement. Of course, people will disagree and agree, some of them. Gold is a currency. वो currency है, वो note है. Gold जब start हुआ था, that was a currency. It is not an asset. Why is it not an asset? An asset adds value. Gold does not add value, right? When I buy one share, stock market में एक share खरीदता हूँ, तो उस company में there are lakhs of people going to work, creating value, right? Gold stores value, does not create value. So it's a currency, not an asset. Okay, that is why gold in dollar terms, it's a surprise to most of us when I tell this. In India, gold has gone from 2,000 to 30,000. So my mom debated so much with me, saying that Feroze, you're bonkers, tu pagal ho gaya. Gold zero kaise bol sakta hai tu TV pe? So my mom said, but 2000 का जो 30,000 हुआ है, उसमें gold की कोई करामात नहीं है. Gold has not done something great. Gold wears a jacket which is the dollar jacket. डॉलर मजबूत हुआ है, इसीलिए गोल्ड का दाम इंडिया में बढ़ा है. डॉलर इतना मजबूत हो गया कि गोल्ड का दाम इंडियन रुपीस में बढ़ा है, क्योंकि गोल्ड इज अ ग्लोबल एसेट, इट इज नॉट एन इंडियन एसेट, राइट? सो इफ यू रिमूव दैट, डॉलर के माध्यम में, डॉलर के डिनोमिनेशन में, इफ यू गो एंड चेक ऑन गूगल, 1979 जिस साल में पैदा हुआ था, फॉर्चुनेटली, वहां से लेके 2003 तक गोल्ड ने रिटर्न नेगेटिव दी. 23 साल के लिए कैन एन एसेट गिव नेगेटिव रिटर्न फॉर 23 इयर्स? That is evidence enough that it's not an asset, it's a currency. It was $800 per ounce, went down. It came back to 800 only in 2003, which was 24 years after it started going down. No asset can behave in a fashion of 24 years negative return. But point in India, when we see gold, it is covered up because dollar 6 रुपए से 70 रुपए पहुंच गया.
Absolutely.
Right? That's the reason. That's why gold zero. Otherwise people say this asset allocation is very biased. It's not biased. Real estate zero. After 4 years, real estate will come back after a bank.
Absolutely, yeah. You know, gold is a sensitive topic of discussion. So let's keep it only to this forum and not take it back home. You know,
so let me put my disclaimer. If you're using it as jewelry, please use it, because there are women in this platform and they'll say, that's very unfair to say. But yeah, if you're using it, if there is a purpose,
if it is an investment,
then it's not an investment.
There's a separation between the two. Yeah. So on the issue of real estate, one important piece of news, you know, it was just a new piece of news. HDFC sold its subsidiary called Griv Finance. Griv Finance was lending to, affordable, low-ticket housing finance companies. We all wondered why they have sold it. You know, we tried to put 2 and 2 together. Bandhan Bank bought it because they needed to reduce their holding, regulatory issues and all those things. But why did HDFC sell Griv Finance, which was doing so well in the market? After all, both are in the same line of business. They could have merged it, they could have kept it.
Correct.
So that adds to the view that there may not be much scope in real estate, that's one additional point. Let me now shift focus back to the targets of, you said 15%. 15% possible in 2019, 2020, where do we go from here? How do we manage?
So I think 15% is certainly possible because you have 2-3 pockets from where you can earn. Okay, it's not just one piece you will rely on. So if you did a 60% equity, 40% debt, 15% from a 3-year perspective is very high probability. Because equity market to theek hai, right? But there is also an extra return more than equity which your mutual fund guy and your advisor is supposed to be creating. How does he create it? Mutual fund guy buys and sells stocks and tries to create extra return over and above the general public, right? And an advisor like us use plan Bs. There is a plan A, there is a plan B. We use plan B to generate extra return more than the market. If you use that plan B, which I'm saying it in a very camouflaged manner, of course subsequently I will disclose it. So if you use plan Bs and plan As, then if you design a portfolio such that your expected return is 15, then you can test it for last 30 years saying that har din agar main ye portfolio banata, to kya mujhe 15 milta? You can create that portfolio every day and check. How many times would have I made 15? That's a check an advisor should do before he recommends something. Then he needs to check next 30 years में क्या हो सकता है. ये सब check करने के जरिए मौजूद हैं finance में. So point one I'm making is 15 possible. The answer is yes. See, the reason why I'm talking after answering your question is because people say यार कहना बड़ा आसान है, करना बड़ा कठिन है. So I'm just telling you, you check your strategy. For the last 30 years, every day if I did this strategy, what is the range of return? Would I get 20 most of the times, 15, or what has been my worst? What has been my best? Then you get to know whether your strategy is robust enough. Then you use something else, saying that history is history. Is there something to future which I can check? Finance has 2 methods to extrapolate future. Those 2 subjects are called regression. I'm using these words so that you can do some homework and ask your advisor saying that, is my strategy checked for regression? Regression is called statistical astrology. It's called statistical astrology. So what point 1, 15 is possible if you make sure that your risks are managed, point 1. Point 2, you have to, if you adopt a strategy, you have to check it from past perspective by checking that har din agar main ye strategy karta, to what would have been the range of return? 15 na milke minus 15 mila tha kya? Ya 15 na milke 30 bhi mila tha. So that range has to be checked. The second thing is, after you take past, you have to also try and see, is there something to do with future which can anticipate? Regression is the subject which needs to be used along with something called Monte Carlo simulation. So I will not get into that. That will be very technical. But you can actually check next 30 years में क्या range आ सकती है. So if I see that range on the strategy which we have been recommending for the last 6-7 years, the range is very narrow. So I personally think that with reasonable risks, 15 is possible. If you use leaps, then your risk comes down considerably. Right. So it is possible because there are 2 layers of professionals who are duty bound to beat the general public at large. Right.
My next question is, you touched upon debt funds. You said, cut out the clutter, just focus on one fund. But equity funds, there are a large number of funds. SEBI has now classified them based on the market capitalization, large cap, mid cap, small cap and multi cap, besides thematic and sectoral funds. There are so many schemes. If you take any large cap or multi cap, you will find at least 20 schemes coming in front of you. It becomes very difficult because they end up investing a combination of the same stocks. For example, in a small cap fund, one of the largest small cap fund has got 7,000 crores. 7,000 crores, where will he invest? The market cap, combined market cap of all the small cap stocks itself is so low, maybe 15, 20, 30,000 crore. So where will he find? There are 500 companies. Of the 500 small cap companies, I think companies keep vanishing every now and then. So how do you identify funds which will help meet this objective? You know, do you say that, okay, go for large cap, go for mid cap, go for small cap, or a simplest solution is just give it to a fund manager who manages a multi-cap, and the fund manager knows where to invest, how to manage the risk, move from large to mid to small. For a regular investor, it may not be possible. How do you sell?
So how do we do it is, so most of our decisions have to be data driven,
Right.
then perception driven or impressions driven. So how do we do that? We do it in 4 levels. There are 10 different categories of equity funds. First, we try and see which ones are irrelevant because the risk reward is not favorable. So out of which 5 to 6 are irrelevant. What are relevant are 4. Large cap, mid cap, small cap, multi cap. These are the 4 relevant and debatably focused. These are the 5 relevant. Okay. Once you now know what not to do, then your job is simpler. Then you find out that there are 480 people funds. 480 फंड है, उसमें से 5 खरीदने हैं. 5 categories are relevant. There are 480 funds out of which you have to choose 5, 6. It is actually not so tough, not so easy either. But out of these 480, first thing is don't ever buy closed-ended fund. Okay, this is a rule which we put in Anand Rathi 7 years back. What is closed-ended? एक बार पैसे दे दिया और पैसे निकाल नहीं सकते. 3 साल की छुट्टी, 4 साल की छुट्टी, 5 साल तक पैसे नहीं निकाल सकते आप. Never buy a fund which is closed-ended. And if some advisor has given you a closed-ended fund, ask him that question. What did you see in a closed-ended fund जो तूने मुझे बंदी बना दिया 5 साल के लिए, 3 साल के लिए? Data clearly proves that same fund manager, same आदमी, closed-ended और open-ended जो मैनेज करता है, एक ही इंसान, has done worse in closed-ended and done better in open-ended. After looking at this stark data, if an advisor is still given you closed-ended, either he has not seen the data. After seeing the data, if he still gives you closed-endeds who are giving 6 times the commission of open-ended upfront. That has been the large reason why closed-endeds have been pushed to people. I'm being transparent about it. So we banned closed-ended. So on the mutual fund category, eliminate closed-ended because it's not worth to become liquid. And especially when the returns have been lesser, right? So that's point 1. Then you remove these 5 categories and look at 5 relevant categories. The problem is 220 funds. The number of people, human beings which are managing it is 79. So these 200 people funds are being managed by 79 people. So now my universe is 79 human beings. I need to understand their capability. So we check all these 79 people. Last जो 100 निर्णय लिए थे उन्होंने, कितने सही निर्णय लिए, कितने गलत निर्णय लिए. So we check their last 100 decisions and we arrange them in the descending order of their capability of taking right decisions. So person, if he is not taking better decision, अगर आधे सही जाते हैं, आधे गलत जाते हैं, then my child can also do 50-50 because law of probability is 50-50. जिसने 80% सही निर्णय लिए थे, तो शायद काबिलियत होगी. Right? So then you only filter those 21 who have the capability of taking 80 right decisions out of the 100 past taken. Then I have the confidence that this 21 is by design he is creating value, not by luck. Right? So that's the first filter. Then you use regression. Then you check every fund. We check see when you buy a share, if just hypothetically if I told, sir, आप एक share खरीद लीजिए. आपका क्या सवाल होगा? चल 100 रुपए का है, कितने तक जाएगा? ये आपका अगला सवाल होगा ही होगा मुझे. मैं बोलूंगा 100 रुपए का शेयर खरीद लीजिए, तो आप उल्टा सवाल पूछेंगे जरूर कि यार 100 का कितनी होने की उम्मीद है तो मैं खरीदूं. वैसे ही म्यूचुअल फंड में क्या है, क्या अंदर शेयर्स है. इक्विटी फंड्स हैव शेयर्स. सो वी पुट अ टारगेट टू ईच स्टॉक इनसाइड द फंड एंड फाइंड आउट द टारगेट ऑफ द म्यूचुअल फंड. So mutual funds target is a summation of the targets of the individual stocks. So we take the targets from the best analyst and see the target of the fund. More the target, more the potential. So that's the third filter. So there is a long story. So if you did all this, will you get the best fund? The answer is no. Will you at least get the better funds? You will certainly get better funds, if not the best ones. So that's the filter we apply. And that's where I say, I deserve that 1% commission which the mutual fund gives me. So that's, if you buy a mutual fund through me, I get that 1% commission. He charges you 1.5%, 2%, out of which he gives me that 1.25%. That's the commission or open-ended pays. And you should know of it. And you should always know what the advisor is earning, rather than it being a suspense item,
right.
Saying that kitna kama raha hai wo samne.
Right. Talking about commissions, what about portfolio management schemes? You know, don't you think they deliver higher returns compared to mutual funds? If I want 15, 20, 25%, why not go into PMS?
PMS, ये भी बड़ा चला हुआ है. पोर्टफोलियो मैनेजमेंट सर्विस थोड़ा एक्सक्लूसिव होता है. म्यूचुअल फंड में 500 रुपए भी डाल सकते हैं, तो उसमें वो ग्लैमर नहीं आता है, ग्लैमर क्वेश्चन नहीं आता है. PMS is more exclusive, so people give PMSs, but the risk in PMS is 22. Let me give you, I'm trying to oversimplify stuff. Risk in PMS's average is 22. Okay. Market risk is 13. Mutual fund risk is generally 14. I'm giving you the scale. जैसे वजन होता है इंसानों का 78, 100 ज्यादा कहलाएगा ना 100. So I'm giving you a benchmark. Market का 13 है, निफ्टी का 13 है, म्यूचुअल फंड का 14, 14.5 तक आता है, PMS का 22 है. मैं 22 की रिस्क लेना नहीं चाहता आइडियली. भले 1.5% ज्यादा रिटर्न भी मिल जाए, 22 की रिस्क लेना समझदारी नहीं है. That's why last 7 years Anand Rathi has not given PMS. PMS में upfront commission 4-5% हो सकती है, म्यूचुअल फंड में कमीशन upfront नहीं मिलती, 0 मिलती है. PMS has seen a large increase in assets, but I have not invested. I have 9 funds, and anybody can check those 9 funds. That's the transparency you again deserve, saying that भाई इतना ज्ञान बांट रहा है, किधर डाला? You should be able to see my balance sheet as an Anand Rathi prospective client. That's the then you would see that I have not bought PMS, my performance are reasonable. So to keep risk seemit, you will have to not have PMSs, in my opinion. Of course, ikka dukka PMSs could be good. It's unfair for me to give a general statement, but largely this is the situation. But if there is a specific PMS, then I would have analyzed it. I can give you a very specific information to that PMS. So it's unfair to say all of them are not investable, is not the case. But we say 80% of them are taking undue risks which are not required for a person who wants 15%. Simple problems can have simple solutions, and 15% is a simple problem.
Right.
If Mr. X has an access to know a person, and since the data is available about the market, should he invest through a financial institution, or should he invest individually as a person? Because if he invests through, this is just an offer.
Keep it brief, I'll answer. I got your question.
Okay, well,
okay, firstly, insurance. When it comes to medical insurance, there are several insurances which cover different things. There are 20-25 riders possible. Okay, if I use those riders, what you said can be mitigated largely. Okay, I don't think you would have analyzed several insurance policies which can actually address a lot of other riders which are not included. What happens is people want to shortchange those riders. So when a normal person comes, he is not gone through all the 25 riders which he could have added. Of course, if he added those riders, is when those 1 crore cover is relevant. So that is a matter of strategy. All I'm saying is you put an objective. Strategy will require a lot of other information, because I am also restricting that conversation. So point is, of course, the bed you choose will have a large influence. The category of the surgeon you use will have a large influence. But every extra 10 lakhs cost me very little unless I add riders. So people just keep adding 10 lakhs extra because it comes at a very cheap price because of the point you made. बोले यार पहले 10 लाख कवर करने के लिए और 50 और 60 लाख कवर करने के लिए, 50 और 60 लाख के बीच में भी 10 लाख का अंतर है, 0 से 10 लाख में भी 10 लाख का अंतर है, इसकी कॉस्ट 10 गुना ज्यादा होगी और इसकी कॉस्ट 10 गुना कम होगी. So if I have to just quench my ego that I'm covered for 1 crore, then you can do that because it will be very cheap to cover the rest of the 50 lakhs. Then if you don't do your extra riders, then you will of course have. So that's point 1. Point 2 is, should I go through a financial advisor? The choice is yours. Okay, I personally think that an Anand Rathi does not have analysts. Okay, now we run a private wealth management. You have analysts not giving advice to you and me, they give advice to fund managers. That is called institutional broking. That's a different arm where you have the IIMs and the IITs of the world who generate advice and give it to the fund manager. Understood? So that is called institutional broking. I will have a 50-member product team, okay, which analyzes the funds. So that's different. Now, should I use an advisor or not use an advisor? The choice is each individual's. Now, all I'm saying is, if you bought the worst mutual fund or the best mutual fund, every year the difference is 29% return. Okay? सबसे म्यूचुअल फंड ही है, दोनों का नाम म्यूचुअल फंड है. खराब वाला खरीदा और अच्छा वाला खरीदा, उसमें रिटर्न का अंतर 29% का है. राइट? अगर दोनों में अंतर होता 2% का, तो मैं बोलता एडवाइजर की क्या जरूरत है. राइट? इफ द डिफरेंस इज वेरी लार्ज एंड द एडवाइजर के थ्रू जाने से 1% मेरा खर्चा बढ़ता है क्योंकि मैं कमाऊंगा. राइट? आई एम अ प्रॉफिट एंटिटी, प्रॉफिट मेकिंग एंटिटी, तो मैं 1% हक से कमाऊंगा. राइट? और 10 साल में मैं 10% आपसे ले गया. हर साल का डिफरेंस 30% का है, तो 10 साल का डिफरेंस 300 का है. राइट? तो 300 में से मैं क्या आपको 10% एक्स्ट्रा कमा के नहीं देने की क्षमता रखता, तो मुझे चुने मत. ऐसा दूसरा एडवाइजर ढूंढिए जो ये आपके लिए कर सकता है. बट स्टिल गो विद एन एडवाइजर. इन माई ओपिनियन, इफ यू थिंक that person is not capable, go find that man or the lady who is capable to earn that 1% extra, at least to justify the presence. That's the point.
My name is Pradeep Kundu.
Ji, sir.
I've been in touch with the mutual funds and all since 2004. Yeah, your target return is 15%, correct? So usually the debt funds and other doesn't give you that much. So it gives you maximum 9, 10, 11 at the most. So to get it to 15%, you need the equity return to come around 20%.
Yes,
and,
sir.
No, just I have not finished. Yeah. And right now Nifty P is 26 as per the NSE data. Okay. So do you feel that you from here on you can generate that kind of return with this high P? So and that is why the foreign money is not coming, because our market is very expensive and it is not correcting.
So point 1, that's exactly what I'm saying. Strategy has different constituents. Mutual fund is just 60% of the portfolio. What 40% will do will have a large influence. So what we do is, we say that पूरी strategy सुनोगे तब credibility आएगी कि 15 बन पाएगा कि नहीं बन पाएगा. Right? So that's point 1. Of course our P's could be considered high, but there are different reasons. There are 4 reasons. Now P, राइट, मार्केट महंगी है, राइट, बट कॉर्पोरेट की कमाई बड़ी नहीं है. आई विल टेक दिस क्वेश्चन इंडिविजुअली विथ यू एंड आई विल टेल यू 3 रीजंस व्हाई P is not the only measure. The point I'm trying to make is, you can create a strategy. If Nifty delivers 7, 8, 9, you can deliver 15%. What is this strategy? You will have to go through that strategy to see whether it is valid, invalid, discardable, acceptable, considerable. That's when a 3-hour session, which is called the strategy meet, will bring credibility to the statement made. Has 15% been made? I'm sure 1 or 2 or 3, 5 clients will be existing clients. The plan B, which I implied just or I alluded to, Nifty has delivered over the last 3 years 7% or 8%. The plan Bs have delivered 19%. That is reality. Mutual funds have not generated alpha. Plan B has. Right? I'm sure there will be some people who would have invested in a structure product and it's matured. So if some portion of my portfolio made 19 when Nifty did 7, is this true or false? There are ISIN numbers, we are RBI regulated, so you can check. So when mutual fund है, खाली mutual fund से नहीं होगा, लिखित में ले लो मेरे से. Right? क्या कौन रहा है? पूरे mutual fund से.
Which other products will deliver you 19 to 20%?
Sir, which will, that's exactly what I'm saying. The ones which will be called structure products, they have potential. Now you have to evaluate them, you have to understand them. Are they valid? You have to do. That will require 3-hour discussion. And before I do this 3-hour discussion, I tell that unless you tell me the entire balance sheet, I will not give advice. Because पूरी balance sheet देखे बगैर मुझे advice नहीं देनी.
There are some instruments which are not attachable. So can you just explain about what are those instruments which are not attachable?
So which are those 3 instruments which are not attachable? Very important. Looks like not a big priority. I insist most of my clients to do it. One is PPF and EPF is not attachable. जो PF में पैसे पड़े रहते हैं ना, PF और EPF में वो attach नहीं कर सकता. अब उसको attachable की realm में लाने की बातचीत चल रही है, but as things stand today, whatever my money is, which I have earned over periods of time, that is not attachable. So that's an automatic process, but unfortunately लोगों के पैसे उसमें इतने नहीं होते कि जिंदगी कट जाए. That's the drawback of this method. Somebody has 50 lakhs, somebody has crores, somebody has only 20 lakhs in a PPF. I have seen some portfolios which have 5-7 crores also in PPF. Then I know that I don't need method 2 and method 3. Method 2 is something called MWPA, Married Woman Property Act. ये मेथड हर इंश्योरेंस पॉलिसी या ज्यादातर इंश्योरेंस पॉलिसी में अगर आपने ये टिक मार्क किया, MWPA करके टिक मार्क किया, तो वो इंश्योरेंस पॉलिसी अटैचमेंट से फ्री मुक्त होने की अच्छी खासी संभावना है. So if you buy insurance policies through MWPA, they are the second method of not creating or ring fencing any encroachment. That is MWPA. But unfortunately, मुझे किसी को खरीदने देना नहीं है. Investment based, term plan अलग चीज है, because you will not make money. That's what data says. Okay, not me. So तीसरा method है. It is called a simple private trust, which is family managed. फैमिली मैनेज्ड प्राइवेट ट्रस्ट. इसके बहुत सारे फायदे हैं, इसलिए मैंने भी क्रिएट किया था. सो दैट्स एन इररिवोकेबल डिस्क्रिशनरी प्राइवेट ट्रस्ट. दिस इज व्हाट इट इज कॉल्ड, बट इट्स वेरी सिंपल. भारी भरकम शब्द लगते हैं इसमें, बट ये एक्चुअली 7 पेज डॉक्यूमेंट हम बनाते हैं, उसकी रजिस्ट्री करते हैं, तो एक सेपरेट पैन कार्ड आता है, सेपरेट चेकबुक आती है, सेपरेट बैंक अकाउंट होता है, सेपरेट डीमैट अकाउंट होता है. वो मेरे से अलग एंटिटी, लीगल एंटिटी क्रिएट हो जाती है. So that entity, जब आप उसमें पैसे डाल देते हो, that automatically helps in different purposes. One is to make it protected, more protected. Second is, India में inheritance tax आने की अच्छी खासी संभावना है. Inheritance tax का ये मतलब है कि 1984 तक था इंडिया में, अगर मैं मर जाऊं और मेरे बच्चे को एक 100 रुपए दूं, तब टैक्स लायबिलिटी आती है 30% की. फॉर एग्जांपल, वो टैक्स लायबिलिटी ग्लोबली बड़ी कंट्रियों में है, यूएस में है, यूके में है. इनहेरिटेंस टैक्स आता है, तो ट्रस्ट हेल्प्स मी प्रोटेक्ट अगेंस्ट इनहेरिटेंस टैक्स आफ्टर 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. सो दैट्स वन एडवांटेज. तीसरा, जिस दिन मैंने ट्रस्ट बनाया और उसमें अधिक पैसे डाल दिए, उस दिन से मैं बड़ा सुकून की जिंदगी जी रहा हूं, बिकॉज मुझे डर नहीं है अब. बिकॉज मिस्टर राठी मेड मी प्रिंसिपल ऑफिसर फॉर एंटी मनी लॉन्ड्रिंग. बड़ा डर लगता है इतने बड़े शब्द का, बिकम लायबल टू इट. सो द थर्ड इज, यू आर लिविंग अ वेरी लो एंजाइटी लाइफ, बिकॉज यू नो देयर इज इनफ मनी if there is anything which comes as liability. Those are those 3. That's why I created it. So I do most of my investments through that entity, and it helps me transmit the money also. अगरचे मैं मर गया कल, तो my managing trustee is me. जिस दिन मैं चला जाऊंगा, मेरा भाई उसका कर्ता बन जाएगा. तो एक दिन में मेरे अधिक पैसे मेरे रहने या ना रहने से इजीली मैनेज हो रहे हैं. इफ आई ट्रांसमिट माई मनी थ्रू अ विल, it might take 6 months, 1 year, 2 years also. Now here I have created at least 70% of my wealth which can be managed tomorrow in my absence, even if I leave. So as I progress in life, most of my money will be in this vehicle. So that's the third method.